Columns can be created in two ways in InDesign. If you've already got a text box, I can click once on that text box, and up on the control panel across the top, you can locate the number 1, which will be number of columns. It'll be towards the right, but will be in a different spot depending on your screen's resolution. If I hit the up arrow, I've just created a single text box that's now in 2 columns. However, if I go to Pages and double-click on page 3, that's still in 1 column, so it would be better if I could do the entire document as 2 columns. I'll double-click back on page 2, and I'll undo that layout. And before I make the entire document 2 columns, let's whip up a new document preset with 2 columns and review placing some text so you get to see how that's done from scratch. So I'll choose File, New Document, and I have my letter 1-inch preset. I'm showing more options so I see my bleed and slug, and I'll increase the columns to 2. This gutter is 12 points, and points and picas don't exactly factor out to nice even numbers, but it is common that you have 12 points of gutter or space between the columns. So I'll leave it. I'm going to hit Save Preset and call this Letter 1-inch 2 column. And if it was facing pages, I would add a -F for facing at the end. But in my early exercises, I like to leave facing pages off just to make navigation simpler. Now I'll click OK, and I'll choose File, Place. And if I double-click on the Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 text, which is in Text Files in your Assets folder, I can hold down Shift. Instead of just clicking once to fill 1 column, I'll undo, hold down Shift so that I see the bent or curvy arrow, move to the margin and column guides, and with Shift held down, click once, and I always let go of my mouse first, then the Shift key. Just a safer way to work if you're using Command, Option, and Shift on the Mac, or Control, Alt, and Shift on Windows. I wish there was a menu way to do this. I used to teach PageMaker years ago, which is really only used in home offices now or very small companies. And PageMaker had an option called Autoflow that you could turn on under a menu. But to get this to pour in and add new pages and link all the text boxes, you do need this Shift-click trick. So that's how you start with 2 columns from scratch. So I'm going to close this document and I won't save the changes. I'll just click Don't Save or No on Windows. And with this document, I'm going to change the master page so that all pages 2 through 17 using the A master get the new 2-column layout. So let's go back to the master, and I'll choose Layout, Margins and Columns, and make the columns 2. I'll click OK, and I'll double-click on page 3, and hold down Shift and click on page 17. I know for a fact I have no images in this document, and I know all the text boxes are linked in linear order, from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6. So if I hit the trash can to delete these pages, it's going to delete the text boxes, but that's okay. And all of the text comes back up into this original text box. Now, here's the power user trick. If I move to the right edge and look for the resize handle, and resize this to column 1, I could then click once on the red plus sign, hold down Shift and use my Shift-click trick to auto-flow the text, and now every new page picks up that 2-column layout. So that is one of the quick and easy ways to convert a document you've already built from a 1-column layout to a 2-column layout. If I double-click on the cover, which is unformatted, since it wasn't based on master page A, it keeps the 1 column. But all new pages I add and page 2 is now configured for 2 columns. And one final trick. I'm going to double-click to get inside this Adventure and 1, And they added a feature in the paragraph formatting controls to InDesign CS5, I believe, and that is the ability to span columns. Now, span columns only works if you have one text box with two columns. This, as it stands on the selection tool, is two linked text boxes for the columns. So again, I'm going to click the right column, press delete, click this column, and stretch the text. And when I deleted the second box, it relinked onto the next page. It always maintains the threads or the text links as long as one box still exists that was part of the original chain or threaded text. I'll come up to my control panel and increase the columns to 2, and here is why I did that. If I double-click on Adventure 1, in the paragraph section of the control panel, I can choose to span the headline across 2 columns. And there it's centered. In fact, I'd rather do that through the style. If I look at paragraph styles, the heading 1 is now impure because I've made an override. I can double-click on heading 1 and click on Span Columns on the left. And for heading 1 and heading 2, since it's based on heading 1, I'll say Span Columns and Span 2. And if I scoot the window over, you could see the Adventure 1, A Scandal in Bohemia, and the Roman numeral 1 is now spread across the columns so that these are more balanced. And I'll click OK. And this has been your tour of making a new document with 2 columns and auto-flowing the text with Shift-click to pour the text into each column and link pages as it pours in. And then redoing a document by changing its master page to 2 columns, and relinking the text by deleting all but one box, and pouring the text in with a shift click. And we finished it off by showing the Span Columns feature, which is relatively new to InDesign, but very handy so I don't have to cut this text out and put it in a separate box to get it to center across the entire page.